What happens when the Guardian of Kings unleashes her final warning? You have been shown the image of the serpent as a creature of chaos, of evil, of the abyss. You have been told the story of Apep, the great and terrible snake that seeks to devour the sun. But what if that was a lie of simplification? A childish and dangerous fairy tale designed to make you fear a power that you are meant to wield? What if the most sacred, most powerful, and most protective of all the serpentine forces in the cosmos was not a monster of the darkness, but a goddess of the light? Her name was Wadjet, the cobra goddess of Lower Egypt, the silent and watchful protector of the pharaoh, the living and breathing diadem upon the brow of the king. And she was not merely a symbol of royalty. She was a living boundary, the first and the last and the most absolute line of defense for the throne of the gods on earth. And she possessed a weapon, a final and terrible and beautiful protocol, a power that was so sacred it was only ever to be used in the final and most desperate of moments. It was the last Ember spit, a single, concentrated and blindingly brilliant burst of divine fire, a final and absolute warning that was unleashed only when all other protections had failed, when all subtle signals had been ignored, and when the very heart of the sacred was under a direct and mortal threat. This is not a myth about a battle. This is a story about a threshold. It is a profound and forgotten science of energetic boundary, a divine and cosmic emergency protocol. And it is a living and breathing blueprint for the one single and most powerful art that your modern, chaotic, and boundaryless world has almost completely forgotten. The art of the final, decisive, and world-altering warning. To understand the nature of this ultimate weapon, you must first unlearn the noisy and brutish caricature of power that you have been sold. You have been taught that power is a shout, a roar, a display of force. You have been shown the images of the warrior gods, of Ra in his blazing solar fury, of Sekhmet in her bloodthirsty and leonine rage. But the power of Wadjet was of a different and more sophisticated and more terrifying order. Her essence was not the explosion, it was the silence before it. It was the power of quiet, coiled, and absolute vigilance. Unlike the great and projective gods of the sun and the storm, Wadjet's power was contained. It was concentrated. It was a strategic and a patient and a beautiful fire. A power that was held back, that was saved, that was reserved for the one single and perfect moment of absolute necessity. Her sacred home was not a mountaintop or a celestial throne, but the papyrus marsh of the Nile Delta. This is not a random detail. It is a profound and beautiful piece of symbolic code. The marsh is a place of quiet, of stillness, of listening. It is a liminal zone, a threshold between the water and the land. It is a place where one must move with a slow and a silent and a graceful intention, for a single, clumsy and loud misstep will send the birds scattering, will send the fish darting into the depths, will break the perfect and beautiful and pregnant silence. To be a creature of the marsh is to be a master of the art of observation, of patience, of stillness. And the cobra, her sacred animal, is the ultimate embodiment of this principle. The cobra does not hunt with a relentless and chasing aggression. It waits. It becomes one with its environment. It becomes a part of the silence, and it watches. Its entire being is a single, focused, and unwavering sensory organ, feeling the subtle vibrations of the earth, smelling the faint and distant scent of its prey, watching the world with a cold and an ancient and an unblinking gaze. And it is only when the line has been crossed, when the prey has entered the sacred and invisible and absolute boundary of its own sovereign space, that it rises. Its hood expands, a beautiful and terrible and silent warning. And only then, if that warning is ignored, does it strike. This is the nature of Wadjet. This is the psychological and energetic metaphor that is encoded in her very form. She represents the divine and sacred and powerful ability of the human consciousness to remain in a state of profound and beautiful and graceful calm, to be perceptive, to be composed, to be at peace, but to also hold within that peace the absolute and total and unwavering capacity for a final and a decisive and a world-altering act of self-protection. She is the guardian who never, ever attacks first. But she is the guardian whose last and final signal ends all doubt, all negotiation, all possibility of further transgression. She is the beautiful and terrible and divine art of the line in the sand. The secret science of this divine and feminine power is not a philosophy. It is a story, a cinematic and beautiful and terrifying myth that was told to the pharaohs themselves. A final initiation into the true nature of the power they were meant to embody. The legend takes place in a forgotten age, during a time of a great and a secret and a silent rebellion. The enemies of the pharaonic order did not come with an army. They came with a whisper. They were the masters of deceit, of manipulation, of the subtle and poisonous arts of psychological warfare. And they sought to not just kill the pharaoh, but to break the very spirit of the kingdom itself. They infiltrated the great palace at Memphis in the dead of the night. The pharaoh, the living Horus, the embodiment of the divine order, was sleeping. The guards, the men of brute and simple force, were distracted, were lulled into a false sense of security by the silence of the night. The air of the palace itself grew thick with the dissonant and chaotic frequency of deceit. A great and a terrible and a silent evil was creeping through the hallways, but there was one who was not asleep. There was one who was not distracted. There was one who could not be deceived. On the royal crown of the sleeping pharaoh, the great and golden Uraeus, the living and breathing and divine embodiment of the goddess Wadjet, was watching. She was not a symbol, she was a sentinel, and her entire being was a sensory organ, a divine and perfect instrument that did not listen for the sound of footsteps, but for the sound of intention. And she could hear in the silence of the night the loud and discordant and screaming frequency of a murderous and a treacherous heart. She watched from her coiled and silent and patient perch upon the brow of the king. She remained motionless. She remained silent. She observed. This was the first stage of her sacred and terrible protocol, the assessment. But when the assassins, cloaked in shadow and in silence, finally crossed the last and most sacred of all the thresholds, when they entered the royal bedchamber, when they raised their poisoned daggers above the heart of the sleeping king, the line had been crossed, the warning had been ignored, the sacred had been violated. And in that one single and instantaneous moment, Wadjet rose. Her great and terrible and beautiful hood expanded, not with a sound, but with the silent and awful and absolute finality of a judge's verdict. Her eyes, two tiny and emerald points, began to blaze with the light of 1,000 suns, and from her mouth she did not issue a roar. She did not issue a scream. She unleashed the last ember spit. It was not a great and a chaotic and a destructive fire. It was a single, thin, and impossibly bright and concentrated jet of pure and divine and conscious flame. It streaked across the dark and silent chamber, not like a weapon, but like a word, like a hieroglyph of light, like a single and an absolute and a non-negotiable statement from the gods themselves. And the flame did not kill, it did not burn, it did not destroy. It did the one thing that is more powerful than destruction. It stopped. It stopped the assassins in their tracks. It stopped their hearts with its terrible and beautiful and divine authority. It stopped the very air in the chamber. It was a moment of absolute and total and perfect and beautiful and terrible stasis. The flame was not a weapon. It was a signal. It was an alarm. It was the ultimate and the final and the most absolute and the most powerful of all the universe's warnings. It was a cosmic and a divine and a beautiful and a terrible, no further. And in the silent and the frozen and the super-illuminated moment that followed that one single and perfect spit of fire, the guards awakened. The palace was thrown into a state of alarm, and the order was restored, and Wadjet, her work done, her protocol perfectly and beautifully and terrifyingly executed, returned to her state of silent and coiled and patient repose upon the crown. She had used her ultimate and most terrible and most beautiful and most sacred weapon exactly once, as it was designed to be used. And she had saved the kingdom not by destroying its enemies, but by revealing them. Now we must take this cinematic and beautiful and powerful myth, and we must decode it, for it is not a story. It is a technical manual. It is a divine and a sacred and a forgotten blueprint for the science of communication under pressure, for the art of the divine and the necessary warning. The first key to the code is the very nature of the weapon itself. The fire is not the chaotic and all-consuming fire of Sekhmet. It is the fire of pure and absolute and unmistakable urgency. It is a signal that cannot be ignored. It is a communication that cuts through all the noise, all the subtlety, all the plausible deniability of a situation, and it says, the time for negotiation is over. The moment of consequence is now. The second key is the nature of its delivery. The spit is not a great and a sweeping and a destructive breath of flame. It is a single, concentrated and impossibly accurate jet. It is the principle of precision. The warning is not a chaotic and an emotional and a messy outburst. It is a controlled, it is a targeted, and it is a non-wasteful act of communication. It is aimed not at the enemy's body, but at their will. It is designed not to wound, but to stop. The third and the final key is the nature of its use. It is the ballast, Ember spit. It is the principle of a reserved power. It is a power that is so immense and so absolute that its greatest strength is in the fact that it is almost never used. Its power is in its potential. It is the silent and the terrible and the beautiful threat of the coiled snake. A threat that is so profound that it makes the actual strike almost unnecessary. From this decoding, we can then extract the 3 stages of Wadjet's warning cycle, the operating protocol for any being who seeks to become a master of this divine and feminine and powerful art. The first stage is observation. You do not react at the first sign of trouble. You do not mistake a simple misunderstanding for a declaration of war. You become the silent and the watchful and the patient serpent. You detect the early signs of a threat, the subtle shift in the energy, the small and almost imperceptible dissonances in the words and the actions of others. And you simply and silently and calmly observe. The second stage is assessment. Once you have gathered the data, you must then determine if an intervention is warranted. Is this a true and a real and a significant threat to the sacred space that you are guarding? Or is it a temporary and a minor and an unconscious transgression that will correct itself? The wisdom of Wadjet is the wisdom of the conservation of energy. You do not waste your divine and terrible fire on that which is not a true and a mortal threat to your own inner kingdom. You do not strike at a mouse with the fire that is meant for a demon. And the third and the final stage is emission. If and only if the threat is real, if the line has been crossed, if the warnings have been ignored, then and only then do you deliver the final and the unambiguous and the world-altering warning. And you deliver it not with the chaotic and the messy and the destructive rage of the ego, but with the cold and the clear and the precise and the beautiful and the terrible fire of the goddess herself. The secret of this entire and beautiful and terrible science is this. The flame of Wadjet is not an act of destruction, it is an act of communication under pressure. You do not burn to punish, you burn to protect. You do not burn to harm, you burn to warn. And a warning that is delivered with this level of clarity, of precision, and of reserved power is a warning that the universe itself will stop to listen to. The great and secret and forgotten science of Wadjet is the science of the threshold, the science of the sacred and the absolute boundary. The last ember. Spit is not a weapon to be used indiscriminately. It is a divine and a final and a terrible protocol that is to be activated only at the moment of extreme and mortal danger. And the myth gives us the precise and the technical and the beautiful and the terrifying diagnostic criteria for when that moment has arrived. The moment to unleash the fire is the moment when all three of the following conditions have been met. First, it is the moment when all subtle warnings have been ignored. You have already tried to communicate your boundary with a gentle word, with a shift in your energy, with a simple and a silent withdrawal. But the transgressor has not listened. They have pushed, they have tested, they have chosen to not see your beautiful and your subtle and your graceful no. The second condition is when all alternative paths have been exhausted. You have already tried to negotiate. You have already tried to compromise. You have already tried to find a middle ground. But the predator is not interested in a middle ground. The predator is interested in a victory. The third and the final and the most important condition is when the crown itself is under a direct and a mortal threat. The crown is not a physical object. It is the symbol of your own divine and inviolable sovereignty. It is the symbol of your life, of your sacred purpose, of your deepest and most non-negotiable integrity. The crown is the one thing that, if you lose it, you lose yourself. The moment of the last ember spit is the moment when you realize that this is no longer a negotiation. This is an assassination attempt upon your own soul. And in that moment, the time for subtlety is over. The time for grace is over. The time for patience is over. The time for fire has come. This is a perfect and a beautiful and a powerful model for the science of the human emotional boundary. For you too have a crown. It is your core values. It is your physical and your emotional and your spiritual safety. It is your sacred and your beautiful and your irreplaceable identity. And you are living in a world that is constantly and often unconsciously trying to steal it. And when your crown is repeatedly violated, when your sacred no is repeatedly ignored, you too must learn to access the divine and the terrible and the beautiful and the necessary fire of your own inner Wadjet. This is not the act of losing your temper. This is not the chaotic and the messy and the destructive and the regrettable outburst of the unmastered ego. That is the fire of Sekhmet, a wildfire that burns and destroys indiscriminately. The fire of Wadjet is a different and a more sophisticated and a more powerful thing. It is a laser. It is the moment when you finally and completely and absolutely draw the line in the sand. It is the moment when you say, with a calm and a quiet and a terrible and a beautiful and an absolute finality, enough. And the fire of this enough is not a shout. It is a statement of fact. It is a declaration of a new reality. It is a communication that is so clear, so precise, so unwavering, and so backed by the full and the total and the absolute power of your own sovereign will that it does not need to be loud. Its power is in its clarity. It is the calm and the firm and the precise and the unshakable warning that says, if you take one more step, you will be entering a reality in which I will do whatever it takes to protect the sacredness of my own being, and you will not like that reality. This is not a threat. It is a promise. It is a divine and a beautiful and a necessary and a powerful promise that you make, not to the other person, but to your own soul. Now, we must take this ancient and beautiful and powerful myth, and we must translate it into a contemporary and a practical and a replicable framework for your modern and your chaotic and your boundaryless world. For the last Ember, spit of Wadjet is not a historical curiosity. It is a profound and a necessary and a powerful psychological and organizational model for the art of crisis communication and for the science of boundary enforcement. It is a technology of the soul that can be and must be applied to every single area of your life where the sacred is under threat. The first and the most important application is in the realm of your toxic relationships. You have been in the presence of the soul assassin. You have been in the presence of the narcissist, the manipulator, the energy vampire, the one who does not see you, but sees only a resource to be consumed. And you have tried, with your beautiful and your compassionate and your naive heart, to use the subtle warnings. You have tried to explain your feelings. You have tried to set a gentle boundary. You have tried to negotiate for your own safety, and they have not listened, and they will not listen because they cannot. The last Ember. Spit is the technology of the final and the absolute and the non-negotiable no contact. It is not a dramatic and an angry and a messy breakup. It is a quiet and a calm and a terrifyingly absolute act of disappearing. It is a single, clear, and precise communication that says, "This is over." And then, it is the act of becoming a ghost. You do not explain. You do not justify. You do not engage with the drama. You simply and quietly and absolutely close the door, and you lock it, and you never, ever open it again. This is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of radical and of necessary and of beautiful self-preservation. It is the fire that cauterizes the wound and that saves the life. The second application is in the realm of leadership and teamwork. You have been in the toxic team. You have been in the presence of the undermining colleague, the manipulative boss, the lazy team member who drains the energy of the entire group. And you have tried the subtle warnings. You have had the meetings. You have sent the emails. You have tried to manage the problem. But the problem persists. The last Ember spit is the technology of the final and the absolute and the non-negotiable performance review. It is the calm and the clear and the precise and the documented communication that says this behavior is no longer acceptable. The next time it occurs, the consequence will be your removal from this team. It is not an emotional outburst. It is a statement of fact. It is a line in the sand, and its power is not in the threat. Its power is in the absolute and unwavering certainty that the consequence will be enforced. And the third, and the final, and the most important application is in the realm of your own internal world. You have an inner assassin. It is your own inner critic. It is the voice of your own self-sabotage, of your own limiting beliefs. And you have been at war with this voice for your entire life. You have tried to argue with it. You have tried to ignore it. You have tried to positive think your way around it. But it always returns. The last ember. Spit is the technology of the final and the absolute and the non-negotiable internal boundary. It is the moment when you, the sovereign and the divine and the true self, finally rise up and you say to that voice, with a calm and a clear and a terrible and a beautiful and an absolute finality, enough. It is the moment you stop believing the lies. It is the moment you stop identifying with the voice. It is the moment you realize that you are not the voice. You are the one who is listening to it. And in that moment of disidentification, you take back your power. The voice may still whisper, but it no longer has a throne. It no longer has a crown. From this ancient and beautiful and powerful science, we can extract the Wadjet standard, the 4 great and sacred laws of the emergency warning. The first law is, do not overuse the ember. A warning that is delivered every day is no longer a warning. It is just noise. The final and the absolute and the terrible power of the last ember spit is in its rarity. You must save your fire for the one, single, and truly mortal threat. The second law is, hold power in reserve. You must learn to cultivate the calm and the silent and the watchful and the patient and the beautiful and the terrifying stillness of the coiled snake. You do not react to every provocation. You do not enter every fight. You stay calm until the one single and critical moment arrives. And in that moment, and only in that moment, do you strike. The third law is, signal without harm. The purpose of the last ember's spit is not to destroy the enemy. It is to stop them. It is to communicate a boundary with a clarity that is so absolute that it makes any further violence unnecessary. You must learn to be firm without being destructive. You must learn to be powerful without being cruel. And the fourth and the final and the most important law is, protect the crown first. Your one and only and sacred and absolute and non-negotiable duty is to protect the integrity of your own divine and sovereign self. All other considerations are secondary. You must be willing to be seen as the villain, to be called selfish, to be misunderstood if that is the price of protecting your own sacred and beautiful and irreplaceable soul. A true and a powerful and a divine authority does not need to roar all the time. It speaks only when it is necessary, and when it does, the world falls silent and listens. The final and most beautiful image of this ancient and powerful and feminine science is not an image of a battle won, but of a peace that has been restored. Wadjet, her work done, her divine and terrible and beautiful and necessary warning delivered, does not celebrate her victory. She does not demand a tribute. She does not gloat over her defeated and terrified foes. She simply and gracefully and silently returns to her place of quiet and coiled and patient repose upon the crown of the king. The fire is extinguished, but it is not gone. It has simply been withdrawn, held in reserve, a single, glowing, and eternal ember that is now hidden once more behind her fangs. And in this final and beautiful and terrifying image, she whispers her last and most profound and most sacred teaching to the heart of the king, and to the heart of the world, and to the heart of you. Power, she whispers, and her voice is the sound of the silence itself, is not what you use, it is what you save. This is the great and forgotten and beautiful and terrible and necessary and divine balance. The fire within you, your sacred and your holy and your beautiful and your terrible rage, your divine and your absolute and your non-negotiable no, is not a tool for the everyday battles of your life. It is not to be wasted on the petty squabbles of the ego, on the minor transgressions, on the unconscious and the clumsy and the foolish. It is a sacred and a terrible and a beautiful and a divine weapon. And it was born for the one single and ultimate moment when the protection of the sacred, of the innocent, of the true, and of the beautiful is absolutely and totally and non-negotiably imperative. And the work of your soul is to learn to cultivate your own inner Wadjet. It is to learn to become a being of profound and beautiful and graceful and calm presence. It is to learn to develop a sharp and a clear and a compassionate and an unwavering perception. It is to learn to build and to maintain firm and loving and sacred boundaries. And it is to have the supreme and the divine and the terrifying and the beautiful courage to know that within that calm and within that peace and within that grace, there lives a fire, a final and a terrible and a beautiful and a divine and a sacred fire, and that you have the right and the duty to unleash it when the sacred must be defended. When danger rises, clarity must ignite, and when the ember speaks, the world listens. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."